The stage lights flash, the crowd roars, and a name echoes louder than the drums, Burna Boy. To millions, he is the African giant, a voice that transcends borders, a sound that carries both pain and pride. But behind the spotlight lies a story drenched in struggle, rebellion, and the kind of ambition that refuses to be silenced. His rise wasn't smooth, it was a war against doubt, rejection, and the weight of expectations that could have crushed anyone else. Every song, every performance, carries the scars of a journey that almost broke him. Yet, here he stands, not just as an artist, but as a force, a symbol of what it means to fight for your place in the world. This is the untold rise of Burna Boy, an odyssey from the streets of Port Harcourt to the pinnacle of the Grammys. Burna Boy's story begins in the bustling oil city of Port Harcourt, Nigeria, in the early 1990s, a place filled with both wealth and hardship, where children grew up surrounded by contradictions. Born Domini Ebunalua Ogulu on July 2, 1991, he entered a world still finding its balance after years of military rule, where art and survival often collided. His surroundings were alive with rhythm, and in that environment, music was not just entertainment, it was an escape, a language, a lifeline. His family carried music in their blood. His grandfather, Benson Idenige, once managed the legendary Fela Kuti, and that legacy quietly shaped the air Burna breathed as a child. His mother, Bose Ogulu, a woman of vision and discipline, worked as a translator, but she also planted the seeds of artistry in her son, guiding him with firm hands and a sharp mind. In that household, music was not a hobby, it was a tradition, a weight, and a promise waiting to be fulfilled. As a boy, Burna was restless, curious, and endlessly drawn to sound. He found joy in experimenting with rhythms, creating beats on fruity loops, and losing himself in reggae, Afrobeat, and American rap. His friends remember him as vibrant yet unpredictable, a kid who could charm a crowd one moment and rebel against rules the next. School gave him structure, but it could not contain his growing fire, a hunger that was already pushing him beyond the ordinary. The city around him was tough, unpredictable, and sometimes unforgiving, and those streets carved resilience into his character. Every noise, every struggle, every burst of laughter in Port Harcourt would someday echo in his music, shaping lyrics that carried both joy and pain. In these early years, Burna Boy was more than a boy with a dream, he was a storm quietly forming on the horizon, waiting for the world to notice. When Burna returned from his time in London, he was not the polished star the world now knows, he was a young man still searching for identity. London had been difficult, marked by school troubles and moments of disconnection that left him uncertain about his future. Back in Nigeria, he faced a different kind of struggle, one where his dream of music had to fight against the hard reality of an industry that was crowded, unforgiving, and often dismissive of new sounds. At first, his music did not carry the weight it would one day hold. Early singles drifted unnoticed, and many dismissed his voice as strange, his style as unpolished, his ambition as unrealistic. In a culture where artists often had to fit a mold to be accepted, Burna was already breaking patterns, and that difference made it harder for him to be embraced. Still, he was relentless, pouring hours into the studio, sharpening his sound, and carrying the conviction that one song could change everything. He hustled through Port Harcourt and Lagos, searching for ears that would listen, for a stage that would hold him, for believers in a vision that was bigger than himself. In those moments of rejection, the fire inside him only grew hotter, because for Burna, failure was not an ending, it was fuel. Then, the breakthrough began to show itself. In 2012, with the release of Like to Party, his voice finally cut through the noise, spreading beyond Port Harcourt and into the heart of Nigeria's music scene. The song was fresh, raw, and different, it carried his energy, his defiance, his refusal to blend into the crowd. Burna Boy was no longer a dreamer fighting to be heard, he was becoming a name that the streets could not ignore. Success brought Burna Boy into the spotlight, but with it came turbulence that threatened to drown him. After the glow of Like to Party, he faced clashes with his label, disagreements over contracts, and whispers that he was too difficult to manage. His raw talent was undeniable, yet his rebellious spirit created friction, and for a while, his career felt like it was balancing on the edge of brilliance and chaos. From 2013 to 2017, his journey was marked by instability, moving between Nigeria, South Africa, and the UK, carrying both the fame of a rising star and the burden of controversy. Some questioned his discipline, others doubted if he could sustain the fire, and even fans sometimes wondered if his career would fade as quickly as it had risen. Still, through the noise, Burna never stopped recording, never stopped writing, never stopped believing that his sound could not be silenced. Then came the turning point, a moment almost born by accident. In 2018, his song, Yeet, dropped at the same time Kanye West released an album of the same name, and suddenly the world's attention tilted in his direction. The track became an anthem, echoing in clubs, streets, and across borders, capturing both the defiance of youth and the pride of a continent rising. From that moment, Burna Boy was no longer just a Nigerian star, he was an international force. Invitations to global stages followed, with his Coachella performance in 2019 marking his arrival as a true African giant. The climax of years of struggle had finally arrived, transforming Burna from a troubled, restless artist into a symbol of Afrobeat's global takeover, and his story was only just beginning. By the time 2020 arrived, Burna Boy was no longer chasing recognition, he was demanding his place among the greats. His album Twice as Tall carried not just music but a declaration, a bold claim that African voices could no longer be sidelined. In 2021, that declaration was answered with a Grammy Award, a victory that echoed beyond his name and became a moment of pride for Nigeria, for Africa, and for every young artist who believed their sound could touch the world. The win was more than a trophy, it was a validation of years spent fighting against rejection, doubt, and controversy. Burna stood on that stage not only as Dominique Aguilar, the boy from Port Harcourt, but as a symbol of resilience, a man who turned his scars into songs and his battles into bridges. His music became a mirror, reflecting both the joy and the pain of his people, giving them a voice in places they had never been heard before. But even as the world celebrated him, Burna remained unapologetically himself, outspoken, fiery, and unafraid of controversy. He challenged governments, criticized injustice, and spoke boldly about the struggles of African youth, drawing both admiration and criticism in equal measure. For some, he was a hero with a fearless tongue. For others, a provocateur who pushed boundaries too far. Yet, his influence only grew stronger. Collaborations with global stars like Beyoncé, Stormzy, and Sam Smith placed him firmly in the center of world music, while his own records kept breaking barriers for Afrobeat. Burna Boy was no longer just a Nigerian export, he was a cultural giant, reshaping how the world viewed African artistry. And as his journey continued, one thing became clear, this was not the end of his story, but the beginning of a legacy that would outlive the man himself. From the restless boy in Port Harcourt, to the defiant young artist fighting rejection, to the African giant lifting a Grammy to the skies, Burna Boy's journey is more than music, it is a testament to resilience. His rise reminds us that even when the world doubts you, even when doors close and voices try to silence you, belief and persistence can carve out a destiny no one can deny. And in Burna's story, we see the truth that greatness is never handed, it is fought for, note by note, stage by stage, battle by battle. But this is not the end. Burna Boy's legacy is still unfolding, shaping not only the sound of Afrobeat but also the pride of a continent determined to be heard. His story challenges us to ask ourselves, what battles are we willing to fight, and what dreams are we bold enough to chase? If Burna's journey moved you, don't just stop here. Like this video so his story reaches more hearts, subscribe to Myriad Stories Hub for more powerful untold journeys, and share this with someone who needs to be reminded that no dream is too far. And now, we ask you, what do you think Burna Boy's legacy will be in the next decade? Let us know in the comments, because this conversation is just beginning.